Hello guys, welcome to Kaushal IAS. So today in this episode we have someone who has done incredible research on Odisha history specifically. She has not only drawn conclusions related to how Odisha influenced the Indian culture but also how Odias and Odisha influenced the global culture. She has pointed out many things which are similar between Southeast Asian nations and Odisha and even South American, North American countries which have similar culture practices with Odisha. So, without further delay, let me invite Miss Preeta Rout, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am.
Uh, Thank you, first of all, Soumya, for having me in your platform and having this conversation with me. Yes, I have been researching, you could say, like researching, learning, and exploring more about my own roots and heritage, which is basically I'm from Odisha. I was born in Bhubaneswar, and the greater cultural heritage of Odisha's Kalinga, Odisha's Odra, Odisha's Utkala. So not just present day Odisha, but Odisha through the various centuries past. I have been keenly reading up and exploring and learning more and more as every day goes. And in my pursuit of knowing my roots, what has pleasantly surprised me is that although we grew up knowing that our ancestors, forebearers, long many centuries ago were like great mariners, like great seafarers, the merchants, maritime merchants who went to as far as Java, Bali, Sumatra, all these islands in the Indian Ocean. That was not just that, like we just knew that they went in these voyages, and many a times we thought these are very fantastic, legends, and might be there is a little bit of truth in it and a little bit of fiction in it. But as these years have gone by and I have come to understand more and more, not just from our folk sources, but when I ended up reading many sources from entire Indian Ocean region, not just Southeast Asia, but Indian Ocean realm. That means the region of the current day Southeast Asian countries, islands, archipelagos. Then even on this side, like Maldives, and as far as away as Polynesia, Micronesia, and Oceania, like Australia and all. So if we read up, and also China's history has a lot of China's records has a lot of contemporary knowledge about the world, especially the oceanic world of those times, as well as the land regions around China. So we get to know a lot more about us when we read memoirs, then texts, inscriptions from all these different lands which are scattered around the Indian Ocean periphery. So that has been my pursuit, and it has led me to understand a lot more about our land, our region that always was known as Kalinga for a long time. And it was not just a geographical, like a kingdom or anything, just that, but it was more of a cultural identity, like people call them as people themselves as from Kalinga. And it was like that entire belt from some parts of present day like which spanned from some parts of present day West Bengal to the coast of current day Andhra Pradesh to the Krishna Godavari belts. So that entire coastal belt of India was for centuries the most prominent region which conquered the Indian Ocean, and it had the people had relations in trade and culture and socio-cultural relations with the entire people of Indian Ocean realm. So that has been my own pursuit, and I'm still learning. So yeah, that's to answer your question, if that helps.
One thing you mentioned that probably Kolingans have conquered the Indian Ocean. I am remembering a fact that Kalidas in his probably Raghuvansam mentions that the king of Odisha is known as Mahodadhipati. So
Yes.
Mahodadhi means sea, and Pati means the probably the owner. So we can say that Kalingans have conquered the most probably the Bay of Bengal region.
When you say, you are right in saying that Mahakavi Kalidas has mentioned about Kalinga's king of that time in his like Raghuvansam. He talks about Hemangada, the king of Kalinga, as Patir Mahendrasya Mahodadishcha. Mahendra's Pati, like Mahendra Mountains, the lord of the Mahendra Mountains, and lord of the Mahodadhi. Mahodadhi is the great ocean, like Indian Ocean, and the Bay of the Ocean, that like part of the Indian Ocean is the bay, which we see as the currently it is called as the Bay of Bengal. But for centuries earlier, it was named differently. One of the names of the bay of this great Mahodadhi used to be Kalingodra. If you go to ancient Buddhist manuscripts like the Arya Manjushri Mulakalpa, it's called as the Kalingodra, that region of the bay. And the entire ocean, not just the bay, used to be called the Mahodadhi. Even in Odia now also you see the word Mahodadhi being used for the sea or the ocean.
Yes.
Because what is a bay? It is just the extension of the ocean into inward, right?
Yes.
So that was Mahodadi, and Raghuvansha he says that Kalinga's king is the Himangada is the Mahodadhipati and the Mahendrapati. So Mahindra Mountains was also a very important landmark of this Eastern Ghat belt, of the coastal belt, and the whoever had suzerainty over Mahindra Mountains and the main dominance over the ocean was considered to be a real powerful entity at that time.
Yes.
Imagine the entire Indian Ocean, like you were being called the Lord of the Ocean, right? So it is a great epithet for a king or a ruler to have. So you are right in saying that the dominance is clearly understood from such fictional creations of our great poets also in those times. So, and in not just that, even in lot of canonical Buddhist and Jaina texts, because Buddhism and Jainism are very ancient Indic religious faiths, right, which grew up in India. So many of the canonical texts of Buddhist faith and Jaina faith, written in Pali, Prakrit, even in Sanskrit, many ancient texts, they talk about the ports that were on the Kalinga coast, like let's say Tamralipti as a Kalingan port, from where Ashoka sent his daughter Sanghamitra to Singhala, like to carry the words of Buddha, like to spread the idea of Buddhism. He sent his daughter Sanghamitra to Singhala from the in a Kalinga merchant vessel, Kalingan merchant vessel or a boita or a bahitra or a ship from the Kalingan port of Tamralipti. Similarly, if you, and that is like a so many years before Common Era, right?
Yes.
If you see records of ancient Chinese travelers, monks, even normal travelers from China, they have also mentioned about Tamralipti being the port from where they did the return journey to China. For example, Fahian, he boarded a Kalinga merchant vessel from Tamralipti for his return journey. Yi Jing, he also took a Kalingan merchant vessel for his return journey to China via Southeast Asia. So from all these, you see how, and there are other ports also mentioned, but Tamralipti was one of the most important gateway ports, which the Kalingan merchant vessels, used, because that was at the mouth of the Ganga. So lot of commodities, goods, and all could be brought from inner India to there, and Chandrakitugad was nearby, and Tamralipti to almost Singhala and the entire belt. There were other ports, and the connectivity was great. Like they had, even again, Chinese texts have mentioned about trade networks, oceanic trade networks that the Kandun ships, had. So they had, like how in today's world in shipping, if
Mm.
you go to like who do stevedoring and all, right, like commercial shipping and all, they would have their own like routes on the different oceans, different seas, to from going to one part of the world to another part. So we would not know because we don't belong in that world, like we don't know about shipping much.
Yes.
But people who work in shipping, they would of course tell you, yes, that's these are different routes, and this is how we go from point A to point B, or this is a better. Remember that thing when it happened with Suez Canal, once ship got stuck,
Yes.
how so many things got affected,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Like that Malacca Strait at those times, Malacca Strait, which is the almost the guardian's point between going from Indian this thing to Southeast Asia, like Sumatra, this side, Thailand, Malaysian peninsular mainland, and then Malacca Strait. So even today, Malacca Strait is very significant.
Very
In
significant.
those days, also Malacca Strait was extremely significant.
Mm.
Once you cross that and do, then the vessels had lot of options. They could go downwards towards Java, Bali, or leftwards towards up towards Cambodia, Champa, or China, or this side towards, on the coast of Malayan Peninsula, Thailand, towards Brahmadesha. So these type of routes were well established, and whoever had control on these trade routes,
Mm.
they were the most important people of that time. And I'm very happy to say our ancestors, our forebearers, they were never like, barbarians or pirates or people like Vikings were like always considered as we still remember about Vikings as great, ship owners and going into, but they plundered. They were like, they did a lot of things. They had name, of course, as great ship captains and all, but when they went, they plundered. Or we know about Cholas from the after 10th 11th century, how they went and conquered parts of Southeast Asia,
Yes.
and they subdued them. Or we know about other, conversions happening faith wise, religion wise, and all, when cultural differences happen. But I'm very happy to say when our Kalingan people went in their ships, it was mainly for trade and cultural relations. They went with their goods, commodities, and not just with goods, commodities. They also took people, like skilled people, like how in today's world, uh, ship or an airplane carrying different goods also carries different people, right?
Yes.
Somebody might be a expert in engineering or architecture or music or text or scholar, or different types of skills people have. Doctors, different people travel in the same thing. Those days also, lot of people who had other skills, they wanted to go and have a better prospect in life, let's say earn some money or go for adventure. So in those days also people like that went. So imagine lot of such skilled people from Kalingan region also traveled in these ships of these Kalinga Sadhavas. So because of that, trade, culture, and the relation between people, all this was very holistically evolving throughout all these centuries. So so when we don't impose something on others, when we don't subdue others or forcibly do on others, then the grasping of ideas or the welcoming of idea is more, I would say, organic and holistic, and it happens naturally, right? It's not without any fear or any bias or anything like that. If somebody likes something about us, they might adapt that, like how yoga is now, yoga, as it
Right.
is called yoga. There was a time, maybe 100 years ago or 120 years ago, articles were being written in the Western press about the harmful things about how Indian yogis are going and doing this in the Western countries, how it is harmful. But imagine how it has changed now. There is a paradigm shift, and yoga has been accepted everywhere. It's one of the greatest cultural imprints, like our soft power, we can say, of India, that entire world has seen. So that type of soft power in those days, our Kalinga people had. Kalinga people who went in the Kalinga ships, this soft power of Kalinga was scattered everywhere in the Indian Ocean realm wherever they went.
Yes, ma'am.
So
The I would like to again. I have read a research paper written by K.C. Panigrahi. Here he argues that Ashoka's invasion must have included many reasons. One of them must be the to capture the Kalingan trade, most probably. The Kalingan trade can be traced back to millennia before the Common Christ era, and even Huen Sang in Siyuki mentions Puri as a port. I guess Chelota or a Chelita.
Chelitalo,
Yes.
yeah, Chelitalo is being mentioned. Yes.
So
What you said about Dr. Panigrahi sir's book and his point of view, somehow I also believe in a similar type of this thing, because any situation, anything that happens in a time period, it's never a linear thing. There are so many events which affect a certain event happening.
hmm,
Take the current situation in the world, or world 70 years ago, or world 80, 90 years ago, like when the first world war happened or second world war happened, or our finally India's our independent movement, or when it got her independence, and the things happening in the Indian Ocean. And so many things which had happened, nothing is linear. Like if a thing is happening, you remember, you have must have heard that little saying that uh, flutter of a butterfly's wing on one side creates a tsunami on the other side,
yes,
right?
yes.
What does it mean? Like, there is an in-depth meaning of that. That means a thing happening at a certain area,
Hmm,
it's not just because something is happening in that area that thing is happening. It might be a war or a strife or anything, or even a drought or a flood or natural calamity. But what is the real reason is so many things have happened along with it in the past, which has led to this event. So one event is never just one event. It is a accumulation of a lot of factors which have happened for that event to happen.
hmm.
You understand, or is it too
Yes, yes.
confusing?
No, no, no.
So if you see that, let's go back to the time period when today's known historians think about being Ashoka's period. One more thing is, I always imagine in the way Indian history and heritage has been kept in our memories, be it because our itihasas, our, of course, like whatever the Western historians or educated historians say, I still consider our Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas also as our itihasa. Many of them might have some things which are little more elaborated or fictionalized, but there is some truth in it which is carried along with stories in that. So
Yes,
these are itihasa, thus it happened.
yes,
Now if we see that the way our itihasas were, anybody who has been like really important or significant in our, for the people, they have been remembered by such stories or folk tales,
yes,
or poems and all. So you go to any part of India and subcontinent, not just India as we see today, but like the greater Bharatvarsh, the India, if you see, that's how history has always been kept in our civilization. I'm not talking about other civilizations. I don't know in depth of how history has been kept there, but in ours it has always been there. So maybe Kasya Kapila might not be a thing for somebody in the south or west or north of India. But we know Kasya Kapila story, that means something related to Kapilendra Deva, or we know Chodaganga's story. So these rulers were important to us. So even though maybe we don't have a lot of memoirs, we do have that we have not explored. But let's say we don't have a lot of memoirs, we still have such folk things that have immortalized such big rulers and things which have carried forward by generations. Same thing goes for our Puranas, in which there is truth about, okay, these were really historical figures, but then some things were added to make it more like a
Mythologize
magical
or
or stuff like that.
believe. Yes,
So if that is so, And if the same type of trend is there everywhere in India, like you go to north, you go to current day Pakistan's side, where which was India again, Sindh and all, like the about Raja Dahir in Sindh, or about Lalitaditya in Kashmir, or if you go to south, you go to Malabar coast, the kings, or the kings of the Pallavas, or Pandyas or Cholas in Tamil Nadu, or any part. I'm just saying some names, but you go to any part of India, even to Northeast and all, every part, you would never see that the glory of a certain ruler or important person having been wiped away from folk memory,
Yes.
if that person is really good and important. So, how come we never had anything about Samrat Ashok apart from the inscription at Dholi, or something about, like, which were like very recently discovered when the English were like the British Raj was there in India.
Yes.
So it was the Western historians who had chanced upon these artifacts and stuff, and then they could read the scripts of those times, and then the things about King Ashoka or Emperor Ashoka was more in detail, it came out. And the way his grandeur was described and all. See, we in India, we still remember Chandragupta Maurya and Chanakya and all those stories also we remember.
Yes.
But how can our folk memory or our like popular history not remember such a great emperor as Ashoka? Then maybe that great emperor had whatever we see in these inscriptions and all. Maybe his actual nature was a little different. Different in the sense, I'm saying that these were more like a thing from the emperor himself.
Hmm.
See, and this is my point of view. You don't have to agree on this. I'm just trying to understand how things might have been, because history is always, we have to,
Narrative based,
you know,
you can say.
yeah. So if that emperor was so great, how come we don't have any other living memory other than these inscriptions which he has left from Saravgadi to Kalinga and all these places? And in Kalinga's inscription, he has not even put one line of remorse about Kalinga. But in Sarabgadi, which is now in present day Pakistan, he says that his inscription says that the Devanang Priyadarshi is so sad and so heartbroken at being seeing the devastation that happened in Kalinga and everything.
Hmm.
If somebody is so heartbroken, why would they put that heartbreak thing as far away as possible in their border, that's last border of his, and not somewhere more closer to where the heartbreak happened, or more central that people would know about it? So that is one red marker for
Hmm.
me. Like, one, like, why? Second thing is, I have read Ashoka Vadana.
Hmm.
It's a book. See, Singhali's history is very, very strong in keeping the history of Buddha, Buddhist history alive. It's more, you find a lot of things in Singhala, because Singhala was one of the strongest strongholds of Buddhism. In fact, when the tooth relic, the Danta Asti of Buddha was being worshipped here in Kalinga, in Dantapura, uh, which was directly the Dantasthi given by Khemma, one of the disciples of Buddha, to King Brahmadatta, who built a temple for this tooth relic in his capital Dantapuri. And it was a bhavya mandir, and it was always very popular, and it was there for centuries. And then a time came when that the current king was Guha Shiva, and threat came. So people wanted to, other rulers, away the tooth relic, because whoever had such relics of the Buddha, they thought that that had magical powers, and they would become, like, the most dominant person at that time, most dominant ruler. So there was a threat for this tooth relic to having been taken away from Kalinga. So what Guha Shiva, the that time ruler, did, he entrusted his daughter, Princess Hemamala or Hemamali. See, another thing again, we have forgotten our own history.
Yes.
How do we know about Hemamala? Hemamala's history is written even now. celebrated in Sri Lanka, present day Sri Lanka. They talk her about as Hemamali or Hemamala, the princess of Kalinga, who came from all the way from Kalinga by hiding the tooth relic in her long dresses of hair, by braving that journey on foot for some time, and then from Tamritti by ship. She came to Singhala by having been sent by her father along with her husband Prince Danta. They reached Singhala. They entrusted that Danta Asti, the tooth relic, to the then king of Singhala, because Singhala was the strongest stronghold of Buddhism.
Yes.
So it would be safe there. So that time the king built a temple and worshipped it there. Eventually, that same tooth relic is still worshipped in Sri Lanka in a temple of tooth at Kandy. So if you ever go to Sri Lanka, you go to Kandy, the Dalada Sri Dalada Maligava temple, or the temple of the tooth, still has the same tooth relic, the Danta Asti, which was carried by Hemamala. So, how do we know about this story? We know about our story from the Sri Lankan memoirs.
Yes.
Even now, they have movies, they have popular books, they have sculptures. But do we know about Hemamala? No.
No.
So, what I was coming to, I'll go back now. So, Sri Lanka being a stronghold of Buddhism, they have lots of great, books and memoirs and texts about Buddhist history.
Yes.
Ashoka being Emperor Ashoka being a very big promoter of Buddhism of his times, because he, as a ruler, the way he spread Buddhism as a religion and a faith and whatever, it is really commendable for his time, because when he became Buddhist, so he did all that, because of which Buddhism spread to a lot of other places because of this patronage, this royal patronage at that time. Till then, it was only through the merchants or normal people or the monks it was traveling. So because of that, it traveled. Now let's again go back. So in Sri Lanka, there is a biography about Ashoka, which is called Ashokavadana. You will find the English translation of Ashokavadana easily, free to download and read. It's available online, free to download and read. In that, about Ashoka's biography, it is said that Ashoka had accepted Buddhism many years before he had attacked Kalinga. So he
Yes.
was already a Buddhist.
Yes.
So if somebody is already a Buddhist, and how can, like, the popular narrative when we hear about it is of course nice about our land, when we hear, okay, in this land that Chandashoka became Dharmashoka, as a narrative it sounds good. But then, if somebody is already a Buddhist, why would they utter, like, why do they do so much of violence against normal people of a land? In our Hindu philosophy of war, till then you will see war happen only between armies, kings, or like the similar people, and they were never, the common people were taken as slaves or prisoners, or they were being treated cruelly. You'll never see any of the narrations of different wars happening in different, because there was always war even in India between Hindu kings, Buddhist Hindu kings, Jain. That was a way of having domination. The Chakravarti, remember that
Yes.
word,
Chakravarti.
Chakravarti Samrat. So that type of war always happened. People always wanted to have a suzerainty over larger lands, but there were ethics. That means there was never any common people, women, children, monks, nuns. They were never harmed, right?
Specifically
But
saying
it
when
also,
Dharma Yuddha.
yeah.
One has mentioned
Now
Dharma
we
Yuddha.
see
Yes.
Now we see, after Ashoka's attack on Kalinga, that barbaric whatever happened,
Hmm.
how many thousands and thousands and thousands of people were taken as slaves and deported and all. Have you ever seen that happening in any such contemporary or prior
No.
situations in India? No. So this is another red marker for
Yes.
me. For
Yes.
me, I'm not saying I read it anywhere. So one thing is, this person is already a Buddhist. Then second thing is, he takes so many years to prepare and then attack Kalinga.
Hmm.
His grandfather never attacked Kalinga. his father, who was even greater than his grandfather in, people feared him. Like, he never attacked Kalinga. This person, he thinks of attacking Kalinga, but he doesn't immediately attack Kalinga. He takes 7 or 8 years to prepare, and then he attacks Kalinga. Now, why was Kalinga important? So, if you go back to his grandfather's time, and you see the text from those times, Kalinga used to be a Jaina stronghold. Some Greek historians like Diodorus have written that in from back to, if you go to Megasthenes' account of Chandragupta's court and all, you hear about Kalinga, how great was Kalinga's glory, what was the army, what was the elephant strength. Even Diodorus goes as far as to say that the elephant strength of Kalinga was so great that no other foreign in the sense non-Kalinga. I'm not saying that Yavanas or anything, but any other part of Bharata's mainland also, they even dared to attack Kalinga. So
Right.
even Greek historians have written,
Mm.
and other prior historians have written in their records that Kalinga's elephant army was so great, Kalinga's resources were so great, everything. So that means this place was always a coveted place and feared place. Like, because of the way the topography was, only people of Kalinga knew how to maneuver in those, very tricky terrains.
Yes.
But anybody from outside, it was difficult for them to conquer that terrain,
Mm.
right? When you grow up, like when we grow up in a certain area, and we are that resourceful that if we have challenges also, we make ourselves trained to understand those challenges, work with it, and still use it for our advantage. But imagine somebody from outside our periphery, for them those challenges are great. For example, the greatest challenge was the dense forests and the wild beasts. For example, our elephant strength. Our elephant strength has been spoken from time immemorial till almost Ibn Khordadbeh's time. The Persian geographers also have written. You know about Huan Shang's mention about how Kalinga's elephants were the greatest. So
Yes.
imagine the greatest elephant strength, and those elephants are not anything that you could just, okay, it's just an elephant. They were so fierce. Like, people literally were scared to get into such territories, and they didn't know how to navigate the rivers
Mm.
or the swamps or the mountains and forests to reach the port cities, right? So that's why Kalinga always enjoyed this great isolation and very pristine existence. So there, he being a person, Ashoka, let's go back to Ashoka. Ashoka didn't even spare one of any of his siblings apart from one, only one who he loved.
Right.
One person who has such, very great, I'm not using great as a positive way here. I'm saying like that way sometimes some people who are very ambitious, highly ambitious, and want to be the one and only, that means that person would have already thought this, okay, this area is there, this Kalinga region, it's so prosperous, it has got ports which are the gateways to all the riches in Southeast Asia, it has got natural resources which are like equal to none, like there's excellent natural
Yeah.
resources, the people are so skilled and everything, and it is not under me, it was not under my dad or my father. And how come it is not in our empire yet, the great
Mm.
empire that we have built? So maybe, just maybe, thinking about how it could have happened, he must have prepared himself for all these years, all the, because we know that he was a Buddhist. If being a Buddhist could spare the violence that he actually did, then then that means he had other motive, right? So when he finally attacked, he was ready, and whatever happened, why Kalinga lost and all, we don't have answers now. But anyway, after he took over, he was he was having all the riches that Kalinga's land, people, and the entire coast and ports could offer him, right?
Yes.
So when you said about him, when you started this question
Mm.
that he has written about this, it for just a normal person like me also, who is not that. deeply, like having a deep historical background or archaeological. I still can understand from all these type of things, and especially from the type of edicts he has written. So very flowery, so very great edicts about a king, about like how sanctimonious is somebody and how I am the best, like I am like doing this, like you have to follow. These are very doubtful in a way. They sound good, but other factors don't match. So if we see a whole picture of it, maybe the attack was more to just capture the resources and have the suzerainty over the
Yes.
strategic location and resources.
Actually, ma'am,
So yeah.
I also subscribe to the same thought. Actually, I have also read. Probably it was R.C. Majumdar who have written these arguments. And furthermore, that even in Rock Date 13, where he mentions that I have fought Kalingan War, he didn't even mention the name of the Kalingan king. uh, and he mentions the kings of Egypt, Cyrene, distant lands, but he forgets, or he purposefully, I would say, didn't mention.
You remember that extra special Kalinga edict thing, the extra line, the special line, which was added only in Dauli and Yogada about like the great king, the Devanang Priyadarshi. He he will be a good king to you, but be like it is like a warning. Be warned that if you don't adhere to this, then he'll come and
I think I
do
remember
this things
that
to you.
he warned the Atavika peoples of the forest lands that.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes, but that was mostly them, right? Our Odis, the way Kalinga was, it was mostly forested indigenous people who were the main inhabitants, and they were like very fierce fighters and great, in war and other strategies.
Yes.
So it's nothing bad about being Atavikas, being a forest. That was how Odisha was, how Kalinga was. Kalinga's most of it was either coast or it was dense forest, mountains, and Mala and Chala and all that, right? So, so this type of people were, of course, the actual people who always lived here.
Hmm.
So it might not be the usually the Mauryan type of king, or like how we see in other parts of the country. It was more like very indigenous people's land here.
Yes.
So, so
Again,
yeah,
I
like
Again, I also thought
yeah,
that
please.
Ashoka must have an political ideology behind the acceptance of Buddhism, or that he preached that I have become from Chandasok to
You
Dharma.
should read Ashokavadana. It is mentioned there that at that time the court politics was Jaina. That was like a mix, because if you see in other situations, even in Odisha also, it was never ever that a whole royal family will have only one religion,
Yes.
because these are not religions, these are all faiths. Like nowadays, I'm sorry, and it's very sad to see that people are saying like Buddhist religion, Jaina religion, Sikh religion, or this religion. They're not, they're all different faiths under the great umbrella of our Indian civilization. They're all like sister faiths basically. So it was not like a foreign religion which comes here and we say religion like ours is a religion there. No, at that time, even in a royal family, a king might be following, let's say, Buddhist faith. His queen might be from a Shaiva or a Shakta tradition or like a Jaina. If you read our so many stories during the Bhaumakaras, for example, many of the queens and kings, they both had their own faiths. Even in during the Kesharis, the same thing.
Yes.
They might have Saiva as well as other faiths of that time. These were like, it's like how in a family we are different siblings are there. So you or your brother or your sister, you all are from the same parents, but you might have different viewpoints about a certain situation, or you might have different interest in books or movies or food or just normal points of view, right? So our faiths which have grown up in India, which have been created in India, are like that. So, be it a Jaina faith, and in Jaina is not just Jaina. Jaina faith also has their own different schools. Bodha, they have their own different schools, starting from Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana. Like that, our Shaiva faith or Sakta, Vaishnava, Shunya, like you go to anything, these are all just different ways of understanding ourselves and attending, spirituality and the divine, right? Understanding the divine. So that time in Ashoka's time, the courts before him, the court had like Jainas and the Buddhas both, and the power, gathering what was happening. It was more of, as you rightly pointed, it was a very political,
Politically
weapon to
motivated.
who, yes, who had like more. You go to China's history, you go to Java or Balinese history, Brahmadesh history, any of these places also. Even you go to Egypt, Rome, and all. Lot of these will have all such things. They will have different factions. One faction will have more stronger this thing, so that sometimes they would create certain situations where they will topple the, like
Mm,
the brother or the uncle or somebody, so they will take help from somebody else, like that.
mm,
Sad to say, these things have always been present. It's not just today we see the
mm,
such types of what do you say, this uh, very weird spider web type of things. This has always been there, such machinations and political, what do you call, kilo gameplay.
right, right, right. Another
Yeah.
thing, ma'am, you mentioned about elephants. The last probably glorified reference to Kalingan elephants was given by Niharanjan Nanda in his book Gajapati Kapilendra Dev, that Robert Clive in the Battle of Plassey in 1757, he rode an elephant which was from Kalinga only. So that was one thing. Another thing you mentioned about the various foreign countries and Asokan edicts that he has a political gain, I would say, uh, so that he was preaching more of a becoming Buddhist and preaching Buddhism, spreading Buddhism across Asia and I would say Middle East and Europe.
Yeah, that is good. Like, whatever he believed in or he wanted to spread the good ideas of Buddha, that was, see, every person, we should not just brand a person like a black and white also.
Yes.
We have to always take like what good has come out of it. So spreading the ideas of Buddha was nothing bad. It's like if it is spread like in a holistic way, of course it is good. If it is forced on somebody, I don't think that is a good thing.
Mhm.
Anything that is forced on somebody is never a conducive thing to happen.
Yes.
Anything that is spread like in a way that is appealing to other people or not fringing upon somebody's right to decide for themselves, then I think that is well and justified. And he had the means by then. Unfortunately, Kalinga lost, and he had the all the port cities, the resources, everything to his this thing. He wanted to keep his name for centuries. After centuries, people should remember him. Whatever he put, that type of, mega, what do you call this, aspiration he had, or obsession about himself he had. But that said and done, he did a lot of things to spread the ideas of the Buddha through his children, through different monks, like Sonita Uttara. They went to Malayan peninsula that time. Ashoka's time is very recent. If you see, if you go back before, like Ashoka's time is way after Buddha,
Mm.
Siddhartha Gautama Buddha's demise, right? If you see
Buddha's
during the
contemporary
Buddha's
was
time,
probably Ajat according to our
so
folk stories.
during Buddha's time, we have records about two Utkaliya merchants, two merchant brothers of Utkala,
Mhm.
who met Buddha himself. And they were the two brothers who were the first common disciple, the lay disciples of the Buddha. Like after he attained his enlightenment, like the knowledge and all, in the Uruvela forest, he was meditating, right? So these two Utkalya merchant brothers, they were going, like they were traders. Utkala or Kalinga, all these different names are for the same area, right? In different parts of this area, different times. So it was not just maritime trade. People also had land trade, like the like how we call sadhavas for the maritime traders. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, your skin is frozen. I thought it's so what I was saying, yeah, Trapusa and Bhallika are these two Utkalya merchant brothers who, during their trade ventures into the Madhya Desa towards India's other hinterland, with a caravan, they were traveling and they saw the Buddha right after he had attained his enlightenment. He was meditated at that time. He was hungry, and the brothers fed him, like a portion of rice, honey, which we think that it is the Arisa Pitha of today, similar to Arisa Pitha of today. And being happy with these two brothers, the Buddha actually gifted eight strands of his own hair. So these became the Kesha Asti. Any part of the Buddha is called an Asti, like a relic, which is worshipped and highly revered by Buddhists. So this Kesha Asti, which was given by the Buddha himself to Trapasu and Bhallika, these two continued their journeys when they reached to Brahmadesha, like current Myanmar or ancient Burma. They were enshrined in a pagoda in a temple, and right now that is enshrined in the Shwedagon pagoda in Rangoon. These two brothers also went to Sinhala, it seems, and in our own Odisha, when the excavations were done near Radhanagar and all, it is found that there was a Kesa Tupa. Tupa is the stupa, right? In that there is a inscription which has been deciphered that uh, Trapassu Bhallika Danam or something similar. I don't recollect the exact words. So that entire inscription with the in the Kesha Tuppa about the Kesa Asthi being given in Odisha also by Trapassu Bhallika is there. So imagine the presence of such merchant and maritime trade from the times of the Buddha himself. Ashoka comes much later.
Yes.
So maritime trade was even strong then. Like people used to go from here to Burma, and in Burmese, ancient Burmese history also, it is like mentioned that the people from this coast, the Tellings, Cullings, they went and had established colonies in that time Burma. And there is a place called Sri Khetra, you know that,
Yes.
in Burma. In St. Pio Kingdom, there is still like it's an archaeological, it's a UNESCO heritage site. It's called Sri Khetra, and we have a Sri Khetra in Puri also,
Okay.
right? So ancient maritime presence of Kalinga people, although we don't have tangible proofs. Tangible proofs means any archaeological finding of a ship hull or like which you can really say that okay, this is from 8th century before Common Era, which is 2800 years before now.
Yes.
We don't have, but from such memoirs or inscriptions or understanding, we can safely say that it was already a thing of going by maritime trade in during 6th 7th century before Common Era also. And if they were already going so smoothly, that means this trade might have been there even before. There might have been sometimes successful and sometimes not successful. But because of all that regular goings and comings, they had already established a very successful maritime, heritage already by 6th century before Common Era. That means 2600 years before now. We cannot even think, right? Like how
Yes.
far back it goes. And such a tradition was in place till almost 14th, 15th century in Common Era. That means only till 500 years ago, we had such a big, strong tradition. If you see the large expanse of that presence, 2600 years ago till 500 years ago, so more number of years, more number of centuries we have had this glorious period. But what happened in this last 500 years, which is a minuscule part, whatever has happened, and we have completely erased, forgotten, and totally given up on that part of our heritage. Isn't it really sad and concerning then for us as a people?
Very, ma'am. Actually, I am from history background, but I don't know much about Odisha history rather than Kharavela from the I would say before common era.
Thankfully, Kharabala's Hathigumpha inscription is there, and we have it, and we can say that, things about that time and all. I am so thankful about that. And we do have, like, I would say, even now in Odisha, as I was telling you before our recording started, there is so much of things in Odisha, like present day Odisha, present day Andhra, like what was the ancient Kalinga region. There is so much things to be explored and understood. So much as one people, it has to be understood, not just as Odia or Telugu or Bengali or other language, but as a common cultural connectivity. So much has to be understood that Buddhism from here that went to Southeast Asia, today's Buddhism, to Far East, like today's Japan and China, Korea and all the Buddhism that they have. It's because of Subhakara Singha, who went from Odisha. Subhakara Simha was from the Bhaumakara times. He was a royal, and he was sent by the then Bhaumakara king with certain scriptures to the Tang courts of China, where he went and lived and learned Chinese and translated a lot of our Sanskrit texts into Chinese.
Yes,
And his direct disciples were the ones who, excuse me, who associated with the people who came from Japan and Korea, and this was taken by them to those places, like China's Buddhism. And then if you see our Himalayan kingdom, like Tibet, Bhutan, Ladakh, and all these Nepal, all these Buddhism you see now, the Tantric Buddhism, Vajrayana. That also many people don't realize that the main region where it grew and nurtured was Odisha. King Indravuti of Sambhala, Mahasiddha Indravuti, Mahasiddha Lakminkara, the brother sister duo. One of them was the pioneer of Vajrayan, and one of them was Sahajiyan. Lot of these Mahasiddhas like Luipa, Kanhupa, Saraha, even Padmasambhava, the adopted son of Indrabhuti, he traveled, like he is considered as the Guru Rinpoche, the, like now Padmasambhava is like worshipped as gods, right?
yes, yes.
In Ladakh and Tibet and all. He was the adopted son of King Indrabhuti.
Okay.
So can you see the connection, like Odissa's or ancient Kalinga, I would say Kalinga's presence, Buddhism, you see Jainism, Shaiva, the Shaiva culture that was very, very, very strong in Odisha, especially during the Sarlodbhavas even till date. And these are all connected to our maritime history. Why I'm mentioning all this, these are all connected to maritime history. Bhaumakara's time, Sarlodbhava's time, Keshari's time, they were all very, already people were very well established in the maritime trade links with so many other places, right? So Sarlodbhavas were like great proponents of Shaiva faith. And as Shaivite kings, even now in Odisha, one of the earliest Shiva temples, which is still living, you go and offer prayers there. Do you know which one is that? One of the
Parasurameshwar,
earliest Shiva.
probably.
Yes, yes, you're right. Parasurameshwara, they were in Bhubaneswar, Old Town,
Yes.
Ekamra Khetra. So Parasurameswari is one of the ones which is still standing in all its glory, and still worship is being happening there. There are other temples also from the Shalodbhava's times,
Hmm.
which are more in ruins, like Bankadagada region. If you go, it was the capital of the Shalodbhavas, and Shalodbhavas had a great presence in the Kongada Mandala of Odisha, and the type of architecture and the skills in building and all, it's reflected in all these temples which are still standing. And if you see that time the Shaiva Tantra and all, which was so prominent, you see during that time the type of maritime linkages Kalinga had with Java, especially mainly with Java. You see the Shaiva Tantra reflected in Java because of these times where the connections from Kalinga was there. And some of the great historians even have gone on to say that the Shailendras were an offshoot of the Shalodbhavas of Odisha. And I was very surprised to read. I didn't know about this till few years ago, and of course, I don't know how to understand or read ancient Javanese or ancient Balinese. But people who knew that and who knew English, there were some people who wrote those things in English. For example, has written about the history of the Indian archipelago. There are books even now you can. So some parts of it which talk about Kalinga especially are very essential to remember, where he says that ancient Javanese think Kalinga as the first country, first people that they had connection with, like they thought India as Kalinga. The people of Kalinga were ardent Shiva worshippers. So the Hinduism that is, practiced in Java is because of these Kalinga people who brought it. So if you go to central Java, you see the ruins of Prambanan temple, even the Borobudur, the Buddhist
Yes.
complex. So Buddhist complex of Borobudur, so many similarities with our Ratnagiri, Lalitgiri, Udaygiri, the way it is, the stupas are created. So that time, as I already mentioned before, never one faith was only prominent in our land. And then especially when it comes to Kalinga, it was like a nurturing ground for all different Indic faiths. Like whoever was the king doesn't matter, or whoever was the ruler. They patronized all different faiths, all shramanas, all monks, all different philosophies. They didn't persecute anybody depending on the difference in faith. So what happened was there were Buddhist sailors or monks or merchants going to Southeast Asia. They were also Shaiva, they were indigenous, they were Jaina. So there was a mix of people who went. So whoever went, whoever monks and scholars went, they took their stuff there with them. Same goes for Cambodia. Cambodia and Champa, present day Cambodia and Vietnam. If you see the type of Shiva worship happening there, they have mentions about they have two or three places called name with the name of Mahendra. Again, the Shailodbhavas, one of their main area was the Mahendra Mountains. So when somebody goes to some other place, they will carry the name of their, place, and they will give a, like sometimes we people
Homeland
do
was
that, like how
always glorified in home. People who migrate, they always glorify their homeland.
and they take the name like
Yes.
somehow if you see in New York there is still Little Italy, there is Chinatown. In every part of the world you go, there will be a Chinatown. They didn't name it as their own country's name or the place they came from, right? So like that Mahindra features in some of the places in even now in like Cambodia or Cambodia. So if you see all these type of similarities, that shows that this is all because of the maritime trade linkages. So many people traveled because of that, and they carried not just commodities to trade with but also the culture with them.
Right.
I also I also have one more belief here. Apart from tangible proofs, when we look for while studying history, sometimes toponyms like the place names, or sometimes words in our languages, they carry all these hidden markers or hidden clues to
Right.
our past, right?
Right. Right.
So I'll give you one example. Our our entire cultural entity, our land or the people identified as Kalinga. If you go to Southeast Asia, they thought India to be Kelling or Kling.
Yes. Yes.
So for a long time, they thought of anybody from India as a Kelling or a Kling. So that is a per people, like how they thought of the people or the land. The textiles of India were called as Kelling textiles. So because initially from this coast, our Bandha, let's say that Ikat of Indonesia,
Yes.
one of the main exports was our textiles and weaves. Then If you go to the place names, there are even today you will find places called Kelling, like a Kelling in like Java. Then there is a Kalinga province in Philippines even now. Like how we have states, Philippines, that archipelago has different provinces. So one province name is Kalinga. And Keling, related to Keling name, there are so many Kelings in Indonesia. There is very surprisingly in Australia, all the way away in Oceania in Australia, there is a place in Brisbane. It's called Kalinga. So I was like, how come Kalinga is there? Some modern Odias went and maybe established a colony, like how sometimes we do, right? Like name. But then I see that that name's origin is from one Aboriginal word, Ngalinga, which means country. And if you go to Polynesian languages, Micronesian languages, Maori, Tongan, Samoan, many of these languages in Polynesian, islands, they call they have a word called Kainga. Now,
Kind of.
Kainga is country, family, village.
Okay.
So all the way far away, that is Indian Ocean's extension, right? I'm not saying they went for trade. Maybe somebody got shipwrecked or somebody went from the Indonesian islands further to Polynesia. We don't know. But this names there, all these names with Kalinga, Kelling, uh, Kling, even in Java in the 6th century, 7th century, there used to be a Hindu Buddhist kingdom by the name Kalinga,
Yes. Actually,
which
ma'am,
the Chinese.
I remember one incident that one Pallavan king, probably called Nandivarman, was from Southeast Asia. As the
Hmm,
Pallavan branch was divided into two branches,
yes,
so he was
yes,
given
you are right.
the original branch and
Yeah,
he was called back. Right.
absolutely. That shows the marital relations have always been there between, because see, in those days, now we treat all these as separate or like a foreign entity. But if you actually go, that's what I was trying to tell you a little while before when we were having our conversation, that while studying about a certain time period, we have to understand what was the understanding of that time period, what was the philosophy of that time period. We cannot put today's glasses and read about another time period. So now again, coming back to that, in those days, maybe 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, 1,800 years ago, 2,000 years ago, this entire area was more of like a greater Indian feel, like greater Bharatvarsha feeling. Like
Right.
this is all like one type of culture. The Nagas, the Naga clans, the Nagas are very ancient clans who lived in many parts of India, many parts of Southeast Asia. So if you go to Cambodia's history, you will see a Kaundinya, a traveler from the
Yes, yes,
eastern
yes.
coast of India, and most probably he was from Kalinga, because Kaundinya Gotri Brahmanas are still one of the most important near the Mahendra Parvat region.
Okay.
So the Kaundinya who went, the first Kaundinya who went and got shipwrecked near Kambuja and ended up marrying the Naga princess, the local princess of the Naga clan. Her name was Soma. So imagine how long back it would have been, right?
Yes.
So Naga of those areas and Nagas of India, they're all like one big clan where wherever they lived they had their own culture and tradition, like how Indians, we call ourselves Bharatiyas. Somebody might be from Gujarat, somebody might be from Assam, somebody from Kashmir, somebody from Kerala, but all of us identify as Bharatiyas.
Yes.
Or like, suppose like if you go by Gotra, somebody from Bharadwaj Gotra, like wherever in India, but they are all like the lineage of the Bharadwaj Rishi,
Yes.
right? Like the clans among clans, like the Yadava clan, let's say the clan of the Yadus, which Krishna belonged to.
Yes.
So, clan of the Valmiki's descendants. There are so many places there are Valmikis. Even in Odisha now there are Valmiki Sampradaya. So they might, right now they might be all different from each other, but their clans are similar. So like that, in those days, the indigenous clans which were scattered across all different parts of Southeast Asia, They were all following such Indic faiths and beliefs. So there was intermarriage, like there was marriage between kings of Singhala or princesses of Singhala with Kalinga, and there was marriages from Southeast Asia with coastal India mostly. You
Hmm.
might have read about the princess of Ayodhya who went and married a prince of Korea. Have you heard that?
No, no, I haven't.
That is one of the biggest, like very interesting story. How a princess of Ayodhya, long, long, long back, she was married to the prince of Korea. So today's descendants of Koreans, many of them, like maximum of them, trace back their lineage to this prince and this princess of India.
Okay.
So, and how this has all happened? This didn't happen by the land route. They suppose somebody from Ayodhya or someplace, they would come to Tamralipti or one of the port cities on the eastern coast, right?
Right.
Or somebody from the other side, they would travel from the western coast. So, maritime links have always been strong. We might be arrogant enough right now to think that, okay, we are the most advanced, of all people that have lived in the last 3,000 years or so. But why this arrogance of ours? I don't really understand, because we might think that we are more accomplished now, but how do we know that they were not accomplished then? We don't have many proofs. We are still looking for proofs. We
Hmm.
haven't deciphered a lot of hidden texts or inscriptions or things that are lost to us now, lost knowledge. So unless we understand all that, we will never understand our real depth of our heritage. What I mean.
Yes.
So yeah, like our maritime heritage is so diverse. There are so many more things. Do you know in Maldives? If you read again, see, my biggest surprise always has been how much I have not learned from our own history, like Indian or Odissan history about us as a people. I have ended up learning about us from others people's history.
Right.
Other people have written about us. About us, we can write glorifyingly, like how Ashoka has written in his inscriptions.
Hmm.
But it is always okay. I write about myself. It might be true, might be false. I don't know. Like somebody who is reading, okay, the person has written, so maybe they added few things in their autobiography. Imagine somebody else writing about a person, and in a good way, especially bad way leave it, but in a good way, if somebody has written, then there must be something in that other person or other lands thing that the person who is so far away has written good about us. I was reading something about Maldivian history. Just randomly, I was reading, and I ended up reading about the the ancient, dynasties of Maldives were Hindu kings actually,
Yes.
Hindu rulers. Before the Islamization happened in the medieval times, they were Hindu rulers, Hindu, Buddhist, all that. So they have written in their history, which has been written in Divehi and then translated to English. Divehi is the language, that King Brahmadatta had a son who he banished. Like King Brahmadatta banished his son. You remember in all our stories we have read how in those days kings would banish
Hmm.
their whatever wayward son or somebody from the kingdom and put them in a ship or a boat and then put them into the ocean. Like you cannot stay in our country anymore, like because of something that they did wrong, right?
The
So
same
in this
story
way,
goes with probably the origin of Sinhalese.
Sing-
They were
Singhal also.
there. Yes.
Vijay, yeah, Vijay story.
Yes.
Similar story with Brahmadatta, because see, we have not written this.
Hmm.
Again,
Hmm.
Sinhala story also we have not written. It is from their story.
Yes.
Now I'm talking about Maldivian history here. Maldives is in this part of the Indian Ocean, huh? Not in the Southeast Asian part.
Yes.
Now, Maldivian history says that Brahmadatta, when his son's name was Surdarshana Aditya. So maybe it was Sudarshana Aditya or something, but the way they have written is Surudarsuna Aditya. So that prince, with some of his followers, he ended up uh, coming to Maldivian islands because he was banished, and he somehow reached in this particular Divamari, it was called that time. So when he reached there, whatever local people were living and all, maybe normal, island people were living. And this was a prince who had ways and means of administration. So he started the first solar dynasty there because he was from the solar dynasty, Aditya Vansa.
Yes.
So he started the first solar dynasty, Surudarsuna Aditya. Now, they further mention that this solar dynasty continued for many centuries, and the last scion of this solar dynasty was a princess, Damahar. So, this solar dynasty princess named Damahar, she ended up marrying a prince from Kalinga, Baladitya, who
Okay.
was from the Somavanshi, Chandravanshi dynasty, Somavanshi. So
Okay.
Somavanshi Prince Baladitya being married to Princess Damahar of the Aditya Vansa, whose origin is from again from Kalinga. Okay,
Right.
now this Princess Damahar Baladitya, their progeny, like for another few generations, they lived, and then finally Maldives became an Islamized state because of whatever changes happened there. But they have written it in their history, and we didn't have any clue about it.
Right.
See,
Yes.
about Prince Vijaya also, Singhala's story. About Singhala, so many kings are there who had Nishanka Malla, and there's so many kings who, like Trailokya Sundari, they were like princesses, kings who who were actually more strongly attuned with Kalinga than with Tamil country.
Yes.
You
Somavansis
know why?
Somavansis have also matrimonial alliances with Sinhalese. Somavansis, yes.
Yes,
Princess.
yes. Different time periods, whenever the maritime connection was strong, and here again, I'll tell you a very significant thing. See, that's why I'm telling you and all the students of history to study everything so that you can connect the dots. Now,
Yes.
here, let me take you to Chanakya's Niti. Chanakya has strongly, like in his all different types of administration and different. Let me know when we are really long. We can cut short the conversation. Okay, like if we are going over time. Okay, let me just finish what I was saying first. So in Chanakya's Nitis, he has mentioned. I don't recall the verses about that in Sanskrit. I just remember, like roughly, I can tell what it is about. It's about like immediate two kingdoms, like one kingdom or one region, which is adjacent to another region. They cannot be best of friends.
Yes. Mandal theory. It
They
was.
will never ever be best of friends. So suppose there is a region here, there is another adjacent region here, another adjacent region here. So let's think about Kalinga's uh, presence. Kalinga, then Banga, and then Assam's whatever Pragyotisupur, Kamarup, or whatever the name was.
Right.
Or this side also similar thing. So or down also similar thing. First Kalinga, then the Tamil country. There was no Andhra that time, only Kalinga, then Tamil country of Pandyas or Cholas or Pallavas, and then Singhala,
Sinhala, right.
right? Similarly on this side Kalinga, and middle like there were like other rulers, and then Karnataka, there were the Chalukyas and other things, right? So if you see like that, whatever in different time periods, the bigger entities, they will always have a better relationship with the next one rather than the immediate next.
Good one. Yes.
So if you see even now, Assam and Odisha will have so many more similarities in our food and culture. Even Bhagavatamrita tradition is there in Assam,
Yes.
like us. They have different
Script
names for that.
also
Huh?
script was also almost similar. The Assamese script and Odias script was almost similar.
Script wise, Assamese is more like Devanagari script, I think. Script wise, Kannada script and Odia script are very similar,
Okay.
both rounded.
Mm-hmm.
Kannada is rounded down, Odia is rounded up.
Okay.
Lot of matrimonial alliances between the kings who were in Karnataka, like Chalukyas and other, rulers, were there with our Odisha kings during different times. Tribhuvana Mahadevi, for example, Bhaumakara queen, the great Bhaumakara queen. I think she was supposed to be a princess of one of those regions. Similarly, just taking away Tamil country, Kalinga and Singhala were right on both the sides of it. So they had great alliance with each other. So, like that, if you see, our cultural connectivity is always like strong with all these. places where immediately it might not be, because that will always be a competition or like a little fear sometimes that somebody might take over or do something that we don't like, things like that. So there is always a sometimes healthy, sometimes unhealthy competition, but our relations are always like consistent with the next one more. So in that way, if you see the marital relations with Singhala or all these other regions was because of maritime and the overall administrative, that mantra that Chanakya said. So, Southeast Asia, I think our ancestors must have considered the bay just as a big pond. Like I'm standing in this side of the pond, on the other side of the pond, there is, like, you think that as a pond, like how in bigger, like it's a Bindu Sagara. Bindusagara, one bank you stand and you look at the other bank. Huh.
Right.
Like that, the bay is like a big pond where Kalinga is in one side and Brahmadesha or Malaya and all that are in another, Sumatra, they are in another side of the pond. I'll give you one more little thing to think about.
Yes, sir.
If you see, we have more connections with the Mangalore's Konkan coast than we have with Coromandel coast. There is a lot of very nuanced things which are similar to Konkani culture with Odia culture. Our food, for example, we have kokkaru pullavaja, we have enduri pitha. All these you will not find in Tamil Nadu, although we are adjacent to each other in coast.
Right.
Our type of kokkaru pullavaja you will find in Konkani cuisine. Our type of enduri pitha they call patoli in Goa and Karnataka's Mangalorean coast. Same type of, how it is made. Our enduri, they have patoli, like same. And I didn't know that for earlier. Only when I met people from there and we got to be friends and we exchanged our food and all. Oh my God, you have the same thing. How come? But in Tamil people, they have totally different cuisine and all. We don't have any similarity with Tamil cuisine. But how then? Imagine this must have been because of the coastal trading. And again, that theory, your immediate people are your actually competitors.
Right.
But somebody who is right after that, they're your friends.
Mm.
So even Chola, when they conquered the Southeast Asian this thing, unfortunately for us as Kalingans, that was the only period when after Ashoka, when Kalinga saw another defeat. That was very unfortunate for us, when the Chola army took over the resources of Kalinga. And Kalinga, defeating Kalinga region and its people means you have the entire ships, maritime, riches, ports, the expertise, the people's expertise, the resources, everything you are taking over. So before that, they had never been able to do. But when they took over this and they got the more expertise, you see the voyages from the Coromandel were more after that. Before that, it was mostly dominated by the Kalinga coast. But if something is taken over, of course, the people will be there who are at your mercy, same skilled navigators or shipbuilders or things. So, because that is one more thing, fortunately for them, unfortunately for us, and they use for dominance, for suzerainty, for imperialism. But unfortunately, that was, their advantage was they used that most part of it was Kalinga's this thing.
I
In
have
one of the in one of the books I have read about Pandyan times. Pandyan times are even long before Chola times, where a
right.
student of history would know, right?
Right. Right.
The first century Common Era, second century Common Era, that
Arthashastra
is
also
Pandyan,
mentions them. Arthashastra mentions them as pearl producers. So they,
right? So
yes,
now during the Pandyan times, what happened was the Pandyans were great trade partners with Rome, ancient Rome.
right.
And Rome is not just today's Italy. That time, ancient Rome was even parts of Egypt, and so
Mm.
many other was part of that bigger Roman Empire, right?
Right.
So it seems in their records they say that the one of the biggest the product, the commodity, what the Romans traded with them was the textiles. And in ancient Tamil, like not today's Tamil, but ancient Tamil of those times, the weaves and textiles, the word for it is called Kalingam. The word itself is Kalingam, like how in Southeast Asia they call the textile as Keling textiles. In Tamil, in ancient Tamil, they call it as Kalingam. And I'm not saying that. I read it in a book called The Tamils 1800 Years Ago, written by B. Kanakasabai. It was published in the early parts of 20th century. So I read that book, and in that he has mentioned about Pandyas got these Kalingam textiles from the Nagas of the Kalinga country,
Okay.
which are above Tamilakam, right?
Mm.
So they got these exquisite weaves and textiles from the Nagas of the Kalinga country, and these were traded with the Romans, and most of the riches of the Pandyans were because of these Kalingam textiles. So imagine the Pandyans' riches are also because
Yes, yes.
a great deal because of the Kalingam, and so much so that the entire word for that textile they call it as Kalingam.
Mm. Yes, even the probably the ninth or 10th century traveler Lama Tarnath, you must have heard about him. He also,
Taranath, yes,
yes, yes,
yes,
he also mentions
Taranath.
the Naga people as the seafaring peoples of Kalinga.
Nagas are, again, I'm telling you, Nagas are a group of indigenous and ancient people, and they were everywhere in India.
Mm.
Nagas were, Devanagari. Why the name Devanagari?
No, actually, no.
That comes from Naga. They were great, like they had like knowledge in writing and scripts and all. So the Nagari comes from Naga. That's what I have read in V. Kannaka Sabai's book. I might be wrong, but I'm not making it up. I'm saying it from the sources, Tamil's 1800 years ago.
Mm.
So these these small things somehow, if these are all scattered everywhere,
Right.
and to know about us we have to read about all the others, and then when you read about all these others and you find you yourself mentioned in them,
Right.
like it makes you wonder, like how come they have mentioned and we don't have anything much other than we know that our sadhava went for Bali Jatra, or other than that we don't know. But how did they go if they didn't go? And in a place, if somebody else also came to us, why would somebody come to a place at this point of time? You, let's say you are a tourist in the world, there are very well known places like Paris or London or Switzerland or New York. Like people will immediately, okay, I'll go to Dubai or I'll go to Switzerland. Or why would they go? Because of the name, fame, or whatever reason they would go. How
Mm.
many people would go to some place which is not at all known to somebody? I don't want to take any names because, but I'm just saying, like less known places of other parts of the globe. Why does somebody not want to go there? Because that's not appealing to them. Now, why everyone came to Kalinga? Like, why have so many foreign, like it be monks, be it geographers like Ibn Qadadbe, or normal travelers like Wang Dayuan, as or late as 15th century? Like even in 15th century from China, somebody has come to Kalinga and say that the people here are as honest as the Buddha.
Okay.
They are the most prosperous. Imagine how great that epithet is, like as honest as the Buddha. He has written in, and he's just a normal traveler, Wang Dayuan. You
Mm.
can read it in his memoirs. So if they're writing it about us till 15th century, and that type of image, that type of respect, that type of appeal is there of this land and its people, imagine how great this land had been, or the people's philosophy, or the general way they lived their life would have been, right?
Yes.
And sadly, whatever had happened after that, whatever caused us to forget, or whatever made us totally erase this part of us, is it is totally incomprehensible to me. I really don't understand how can such glories, or such respect, such, I don't know, it's like a part of us totally being erased away, right? How could have that happened?
Right. Right.
Isn't it like something we should all contemplate about and want to know? So unless we find such things in other stories, and then we realize about us, oh, they wrote about us, we didn't glorify us, they have written about us,
Right.
then that gives us another new purpose in life, right? So,
Yes.
and to recreate that, to nurture that, to take it forward, I think is up to younger generations like you are younger than I am. So whatever I do, if I can spread it to you, you can take it further to your students or other people who are interested. And it can be never a one person or two person or one group or one government journey. It has to be a everyone and multidisciplinary interdisciplinary approach. We need lot of understanding from all type of different fields, don't you think?
Yes, I also think the same thing, because I
Yeah,
think many of the teachers in schools, especially, at least for me, my history teacher was so much boring that we have to bunk classes and go for playing or for some other activities. So I think
I would not. I would not blame only our teachers or one or two generations before us. Unfortunately, the way they grew up or they had resources given to them was also already, very meager by then.
hmm,
We who had a culture of teaching basic arithmetic, language, Puranas, weather, meteorology, Graha Nakshatra, even normal surgery procedures, like even to it was given to everybody irrespective of caste, creed, sex, anything.
hmm,
That type of basic and education tradition was also slowly eradicated from us. Higher tradition though, you forget, means universities were wiped away, like universities like Nalanda, so many. We just hear about Nalanda's story and what happened. At least we know that such things would have happened other places also.
right,
So higher knowledge was totally eradicated. But even after that, local education was so strong that at least people had still had the capacity to learn at least whatever basic things. And then it's up to them if they wanted to. We didn't have any more resources for higher education. But what happened in the last 200 or 300 years after that also, slowly that type of knowledge was also totally eradicated. How many of us have like grandparents who even know all these? Very rarely some of us have, and our great grandparents might have had.
right,
But by the time of our grandparents and our parents, the education system was so factory based type of, batch by batch. This is the curriculum, this is how it will come. It was very unscientific as per our Indian tradition system.
right,
So that's why, so I will not blame our teachers or the teachers they had, maybe because by that their time also they had a very limited, way of knowing. At least now, because of all these, you know I would say renaissance in our
right,
in
right,
our heritage thing. I think it's a new renaissance happening because of technology, because of resources, because of people being connected to each other throughout the globe being a, the world being a global village, you can say. And because of internet technology or the availability of books, other study materials, or just being connected to a local from, let's say, Southeast Asia, just to talk to them. And all these are right now possible. Was it possible 50 years ago or 80 years ago or even 40 years ago, 30 years ago? No. So at least whatever has happened, let's keep it at that. But further, it is our big responsibility to re-understand about ourselves. And so we are that generation who are the bridge generation, I could say, the
right.
generation between that and the coming generation. So a lot of responsibility is upon us. How we, and I'm not saying to peddle just wrong things or just made up things. No, tell history as is. There are certain things which were wrong which happened. We should not repeat that in the future, and tell things which happened so that people would have that confidence on themselves and their roots. So, all the best.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So let's wrap
Did you
up.
get any answers from our conversation? Were you expecting anything
Many,
else,
I
or?
have, I have written down all these. You have said many things about the Asogwadan or Candy Temple, many things. I have also many questions, but I think our time doesn't allow us that much. So
No worries. Like we can have more conversations, or if you have any queries, my email is globalodia with two A's at the end, globalodia at gmail.com. So if any of you who will be watching this conversation later, if any of you has any queries about maritime, history, heritage, or anything that I might have any resources available, or from my understanding I could help you, I'd be very happy to provide whatever links I have and stuff. So do write to me on global odia at gmail.com.
I will
And
put
I'll
that in
also
the description
give
box.
you some. Yes, and I'll give you the references also. You can list it at the end of this thing so people can take a screenshot, or or if they write to me, I can give them links, further links. Like if anybody is wanting to research only on Vajrayan or Mahayan or Buddhism in Odisha, or somebody is doing Jaina, or Shaiva or Shailodbhavas or Southeast Asia and Odisha, or different aspects, just don't do a broader aspect. Do try studying minutely also. And if anyone has any such queries, let me know. I'll be more than happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar. Jai Jagannath and all the best.